Bethesda has upset some of their core fans, frankly, in the last handful of months, because after the Shattered Space expansion, they basically went radio silent. And the promise of Starfield that Todd reiterated constantly was that this game was going to kind of live, not a live service, but it's going to live over time. They're going to bring new stuff. They're going to bring DLC. They're going to bring expansions. They're going to bring more missions. They're going to bring new planets, all of that stuff. And that is technically true. They have done that. I'll give Todd that. They have brought expansions. They brought one. They brought DLC that they sell separately, including new quests. So one of the quests I made a video on was, I made the video, it was just like, I tried Bethesda's or Starfield's paid mods. And I did. I spent like, whatever it was, 30, 50 bucks or something like that. And I bought a bunch of those mods, the paid mods, and tried some of the quests. One of them gave you a gun at the end of the quest line that you couldn't reload, and they later patched it, but then it broke again later. It's very confusing. The point is, with all of this, Starfield, I don't think has been the smash, living, breathing success that they were hoping it would be. They were hoping that it would be a game that continues to live on and players engage with it for a decade or 2 decades. Because realistically, at this point, Fallout 5 is expected probably 2035, maybe a year or two earlier than that. And that would put Starfield like late 2030s, maybe even into 2040, which is crazy to think about. But that would put it like 15 plus years after the last game, about the distance from, Skyrim to when we're getting Elder Scrolls 6. So it's not an unrealistic timeline for when we get the next Starfield, if we do. And as a result, they need players to have a lot of content to sink their teeth into if they like Starfield, because they're not going to get another fix for a long time. However, the big, massive elephant in the room for Bethesda has been that modders have just not connected with Starfield in the way that they did with Fallout or Elder Scrolls. They just haven't. There was that story that went viral of the big modding team that walked away from trying to make mods for Starfield because they thought it was just too boring. They were like, we're going to go back and keep working on mods for Fallout 4. We're just not interested in modding for Starfield. Like, we're just not interested. And that's, of course, a viral story, but it's only one team, so it's not necessarily indicative of the whole thing. But I think in terms of sentiment, that captures the feeling, which is just that, I want more Fallout instead. So that's what they're doing. After all of this frustration has been building, which it has been, there's been posts from fans. So for example, Starfield on March 6th, their official account said, "History in the making. Members of the Starfield community had the privilege of attending this launch last week. See the IM-2 Athena's landing live," where they showed a lunar landing, and that's super cool. And apparently they brought some like Starfield fans there for some reason, which, it's cool. I love space stuff. That's cool. I'm not sure what it has to do with Starfield, but like, I guess it's a space game. But anyway, like, it's cool. It's cool. But in response to this, Planetary Union Captain Aura Wolf said, this is great. I love Starfield to bits. I'm still playing the game to this day, but ... You know me and my ... Oh. You really need to start communicating on what's happening with the next update / DLC. Please and thank you. 275 likes, because the fans that are still out there agree. They're very frustrated that they've basically not communicated anything. Prior to this, they had not said anything since, I believe, November, which is quite a while for a massive company like this to just go radio silent on a game they are allegedly still very much engaged with and updating and staying on top of. So it's just like, are we still working on it? Are we walking away? Because I think almost certainly the Shattered Space expansion's mediocre reception did damage to, I think, their plans, because they were hoping that would be a chance to bring in a whole new, I guess, suite of players, to bring back a lot of players who bought the game at launch. But as we can see, like, oh wow, when they launched Shattered Space, you got a peak, 21,000 concurrents on Steam. Not bad, not bad, not bad. But then you go back and you see what it was at launch. I mean, they didn't even begin to recoup the number of players that played the game when it launched. This is the expansion. That little bloop. So it didn't quite get there. Now, what's an apples to apples? I think probably something like Cyberpunk. if we look at Cyberpunk and we compare the same kind of apples to apples thing, you know, they've got 23,000 players in it right now. So like 20,000 more than Starfield. But if we go back to the max, you can see like Phantom Liberty, they were achieving 275,000 concurrent players after a million. I mean, they achieved basically a quarter of their launch numbers, but for the expansion. That's what you would kind of hope to see, you know, especially if you're planning on updating this game, and part of the sell of it is that it's going to be living and updating and changing and evolving. That's what you would hope to see, but they just haven't gotten there. And I think that that's mainly because Shattered Space, even for hardcore Xbox fans and Starfield fans, was just not it. It just wasn't where it needed to be. I'm sorry. Hate to be the bearer of bad news. I remember when I posted my little review, I bought the game, or bought the expansion. They didn't do reviews for it, from what I recall, which you could be like, that's a red flag. Sometimes it is. Like with expansions, it's really hit or miss. Like I don't blame developers if they don't want to do a review period for a DLC expansion. Like it's fine. Like if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. But I got the expansion, I played through it, and in an afternoon, I accidentally finished it. And I remember tweeting out, I was like, so I accidentally finished the expansion already. It's super short. I'm going to keep doing some side stuff, but it's tiny and there's really not much here. And dude, you would have thought that I burned my cardboard cutout effigy of Todd. I mean, you would have thought I committed some grave, unforgivable moral sin. The subreddit freaked out. X/Twitter was freaking out. People were like, how dare you? You were trying to hate on it. You went into it wanting to not like it. And then they played it. And you start to see comments deleted and people being like, okay, I just wanted to send an apology because, yeah, it's not great. Like people realized, yeah, it's really stupid short. I don't know what they were doing for a year. Like it's crazy. And after that, they went radio silent. And I think that that's indicative of the fact that they're trying to hunker down. They're trying to focus. But this has been the story of BGS for a long time, which is that they talk a lot in the lead up to their games. The game launches and then they just kind of shut up and stop talking. I don't know if it's that they fire the social media managers. I don't know what it is, but they do tend to get really, really quiet very suddenly. And this has been the case since like Fallout 4 and Skyrim. I mean, they've always done this. The problem is with this, like you have a fan base you're trying to keep engaged to keep playing the game, and you're just not communicating with them. And that's a problem. And I think it's reflecting in player numbers. Like the expansion drops, they have 22,000 players on the weekend. But even then, like we go to November, peak weekend, 8,000 players. We go like a week or two later, it's down at 7,700, 7,900, 7,100. 6,800, 66. And as you continue to follow, I mean, you can see for yourself that players are dropping off. I mean, in January, 7,300 over the weekend on Sunday, then 6,800. The next Sunday, 6,500. The next Sunday, 6,100. I mean, they're losing about 350 to 400 players every week, you know, like that ends up being a problem. If your game is allegedly going to be receiving annual expansions and tons of updates, like it becomes prohibitively expensive to do that if you're not going to be getting that many sales out of it. And even when you do have an expansion that drops, the sentiment's really poor. It's like, okay, well, we're going to have a hard time doing this for what Todd has alluded to, which is like 3 years, 2 to 3 years of active support and expansions and stuff. I just don't see it. I just don't see that happening. But Starfield's account responded to this guy, Planetary Union Captain Aura Wolf, and said, we know you're eager for an update, and we truly appreciate your passion for Starfield. The team has been hard at work, and while we're not ready to share specific details just yet, we have a lot of exciting things planned for the game this year that we can't wait to talk about when the time is right. We're always listening and taking your feedback to heart. Thanks for being part of this journey with us. So they're bringing it to PlayStation 5 confirmed. No, I mean, that's kind of the other elephant in the room, is that everybody is kind of braced for the PS5 port. I'm honestly really curious how Starfield does on PS5, because I know there's a lot of Bethesda fans that are on PlayStation, but it's not like Starfield has received a ton of great press in the year and a half that it's been out. So I'm interested in how it actually would perform there. But there's a strong chance that they do like a definitive collection. You know what they do sometimes where they say like Starfield Game of the Year edition, because they found one person who gave it their Game of the Year, and they're like, yeah, so it's the Game of the Year edition. It's like, is it though? Is it? Okay, whatever. You know, I'm not sure if I buy that. It happens like every year there's a game like that. But maybe they do a definitive edition of Starfield and it just includes the expansions. They do one more expansion this fall/winter, and you know, it's maybe another 5-10 hours, and that's the complete package. They launch it day and date with PlayStation and do it that way. Wouldn't surprise me. Really wouldn't surprise me. The Todd edition. Yeah, dude, I'd buy a Todd edition. Yeah. They found Luke saying that. Yeah, they clipped it right as I said that. But I think they probably do that. I think they have one more expansion. I cannot imagine a world in which they're doing 3 to 4 years of expansions for Starfield. Especially the trend is really poor right now. I think, you know, if they hit 21,000, 22,000, whatever it was, concurrence when they launched Shattered Space, I don't think the number for the second expansion is that much higher unless the expansion is significantly better, which it might be. But we all were like, part of the reason I think Shattered Space was such a letdown was because they spent a year doing it. People forget, but if you look up Fallout 4 on Wikipedia, DLC, they have a DLC section specifically. Look at this, okay? So Fallout 4 launched in November of 2015. Enhance. In March, they released the Automatron DLC. Wasteland Workshop a month later. Far Harbor, which already is way bigger and has way more unique content than Shattered Space did. They released that about 6 months after the base game. And bear in mind, the team at the time of Fallout 4 was like less than half the size of Bethesda when they launched Starfield, which is crazy. They launched Contraptions a month later, Vault Tech Workshop a month after that, and then in August, just like 9 to 10 months after launching the game, they had released 2 massive expansions. Massive is generous, but like, you know, and added maybe 30 hours of gameplay. And with Starfield, they managed to launch a paid mod that was a quest that was pretty clearly cut out of the base game, and it was still broken. And then they managed to launch Shattered Space, which was like 5 to 10 hours long if you were a completionist and really, you know, hated yourself. And they pumped that out, and people found it utterly lackluster. I mean, it's just, you can't really argue with it, you know? And it's also, as outlined in this article, the other piece of it too is it matters what like content creators are doing. On Twitch, the game peaked at 550,000 viewers when it released. But as I write this, just 40 people are watching Starfield. By contrast, Fallout 4 has 650, which isn't much better, but the game is a decade old. On Steam, their player count numbers have dropped by 99%. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think at some point the numbers don't make sense to keep pumping stuff out. If people like, it's the thing with player counts. It's the thing with content in general. If the views aren't there, if the players aren't there, if the money isn't there, people have voted with their wallet. You can be frustrated by that. You can say that, well, I really like Starfield. That's awesome. But players vote with their wallets and their time, you know? And even if astronauts had fun in space, flying to the moon when it was empty, that doesn't mean that players will want to spend money to do the same, you know? So realistically, this is, I guess, the part of the segment where I talk about realistically what we see. I think we do see an expansion. I'm guessing it's the last one. I'd be shocked if we get a 2026 Starfield expansion. Surprise me, BGS, please. Todd, surprise me. But I'd be shocked to see that. I also guess it's going to be fairly mediocre. If they spend a year on the first expansion and that's all they could put together, I don't think they will magically do better this time around. My confidence in them is pretty low. Given that, I expect more paid mods will come out. I think they're going to do more of those paid mod quests. I think they do stuff like that. You know, they might announce some like stupid prize pool or competition to try and get more modders involved, something like that. I could see that happening. And, you know, maybe if we're really feeling spicy, they release it on PS5 before the second expansion, but I would be surprised if they do that. I think they're going to try to launch it with the expansion. They're going to frame the expansion as a total reinvention of the Starfield formula, and they're going to try to frame it as, this fixes all the stuff you didn't like about the base game. Here you go. Also, buy it on PS5 for full price, please. And it's probably going to be, I think that's what it is. Mod trading. They're like, we're bringing NFTs back. We did it. 16 times the NFTs. Who knows? Who knows? But I would just frankly be shocked if this continues receiving like a lot of effort from them, because I just don't think it makes sense. You put this out. It was a good old swing and you kind of bunted it. You sold a lot of copies, no doubt. The game dominated discourse for a solid month or 6 months, whatever it was. And you got some movement, but you know what? The pitcher caught it. You struck out. Everybody's moved on. The game's moving on. Another batter has been to plate 3 or 4 times, and you keep trying to step back up there. Just chill. It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't in the Starfield. Okay? It wasn't. So let's focus on Elder Scrolls 6. Make that as awesome as it possibly can be. Respond to player feedback. Maybe get player feedback earlier. I think you know what they're going to say, let's be honest, but at least get that feedback early. There's rumors and speculation of like a lot of companies trying to get viewers and gamers involved way earlier in the dev process because they don't want to be caught with their pants down like with a Concord or a Fair Games or any of those. They want to avoid those disasters. So they're like, let's get players in here to tell us this is a bad idea before we lose tons of money on it, And that's not a bad idea, of course, there's just yesterday, there was a bunch of leaks from the Battlefield, whatever playtest thing that they were doing, where a bunch of people played an early version of Battlefield and provided feedback on it. That I think is the new trend. And I would encourage like BGS, who pretty clearly has struggled giving their fans what they really want, just based on player counts, just calling it like I see it, get that feedback early, Do that. With this having been said, I think we'll see something of Starfield this year. I think we see something. I think we see the expansion. I think we see the inevitable PS5 port. When Phil Spencer's been asked in the last handful of months, will you categorically say that Starfield is not going to PS5? He's like, absolutely not. So he's refused to say that Starfield is safe from the ports, which I think is fine. I mean, you've got the game done, ported over to PlayStation. But I will say BGS has a history of partnering with Xbox specifically, and it would be really interesting to see if they launch it on PlayStation, if it just ends up being a buggy disaster. That would be really funny, but we'll see. You guys remember Skyrim on the PS3? If you played it on PS3, it's hard to forget. It's really hard to forget because it ran terribly. So we'll see. Time will tell. Yeah, it had I think it was a memory leak issue, wasn't it? Where you couldn't play the game for long sessions, otherwise it would crash, and it would crash more and more the longer you played it. Kind of a big oopsie. Big oversight. But anyway, all of that to say, rest assured everybody, Luke will return to talking and rambling about Starfield this year. I have a feeling this game is one we cannot escape. It will be with us forever. And Todd will make you proud. We'll make you proud. And I hope you make us proud, frankly, my friend. Because I fear if you don't do it this year with Starfield updates and things, you're going to be running out of time.